If everybody could find a seat, we're going to get started in just a second. Everybody could move in. We're live streaming this. Okay. We're waiting for those in the doorway here, the corridor, and then we'll get started. Good evening. This is part 2 of our informational meetings on discernment, leading up to our vote on the disaffiliation. This evening, by the way, we are live streaming this, so there may be questions from our audience, and this will be posted as the last week's was posted on our webpage. Tonight, I'm going to share a couple things. I'm going to share how we got here. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the history, how we got to churches making this decision. And then I'm going to cast a little bit of vision of a possibly option for the future if our church decides to go that way. And then we're going to close our time with questions. You're free to ask questions, and there may be some questions from live stream. So let's begin the evening with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we have asked that during this process you will lead us with love and discernment as we move forward to discerning your plan and your direction for our congregation. So come, Holy Spirit, tonight, and open our hearts and our ears to hear and to know more and to be able to understand what's important in all this. And we thank you for your presence with us tonight in Jesus' name. And all God's people said. Let me just give you just a little bit of personal background. Most of you probably know. I attended a Methodist church as a youth in Dunedin. My sister drugged me with her. Our parents weren't that active, and in my middle school years, my sister was involved. I ended up going through Sunday school, joining the church, got away from the church through college and into first couple years of marriage. And Mary and I came back to faith at a United Methodist church in Southeast Florida. And there, not only did we come to faith, but I received the call to go to seminary and to become a pastor. I attended a United Methodist seminary in Atlanta at Emory. And I was ordained a deacon in the United Methodist Church in 1980, and I was ordained an elder in the United Methodist Church in 1982, and I have served for 43 years this June, next month, wow, as a United Methodist ordained pastor. And I've gone where the bishop has sent me. I've served under several bishops, and I've served churches in Tallahassee, in Sebring, in Jacksonville. I brought two churches together, it became one. I was sent to Sarasota. I served in South Tampa, was sent to bring a church together in Orlando, and in 2011, Bishop Whitaker appointed me to Lake Magdalene here. I've been a loyal United Methodist. I've trusted those in hierarchy. I've been to probably about 43 annual conferences. But my trust began to crack in 2012. Two things happened in 2012. General Conference was here in Tampa. Every 4 years, the United Methodist Church has a representatives from all over the world come, and decisions in terms of our beliefs, guidelines are made by the General Conference. And so Mary and I were there watching. Mary was very involved in an issue that was coming to the floor, a life issue. Several people in churches in this area were involved in that. So we were there. And one of the most popular pastors in the country is a man named Pastor Adam Hamilton. And he has the largest church, I think, in the country, Methodist church in the country. And Adam Hamilton made a strong move, a motion for the United Methodist Church to change their position on not ordaining openly gay folks, and to lift the prohibition of United Methodist clergy doing same-sex marriages. I sensed there was a lot of politicking going on. Now, this motion was voted down. It was voted down clearly. And then all these people started demonstrating on the floor and shut everything down. And because they were disappointed that the Adam Hamilton, he was, kind of a hero, and they were going to push this forward. The thing that Mary was concerned about never made it to the floor. I mean, it was supposed to come to the floor and never made it to the floor. I had lunch with our bishop who appointed me here afterwards, and I said, Bishop, it seemed like politicking was going on. He said, no, Brent, I don't think so. He was a very honest man. Found out later there was politics going on, and there was a deal made that the issue that Mary was involved in, there was some kind of trade-off. They weren't, if one group did this, another group wasn't going to bring that to the floor. The second thing that happened in 2012 was, now I've served under many bishops and honored them. They've always honored what we agree on. Bishop Ken Carter in 2012 was appointed to the Florida Conference. And from the very beginning, it was clear that Bishop Carter had an agenda. And subtly, but in every time, you could tell he was back on this issue with lifting the prohibition of openly gay, people living an openly gay life, being ordained ministers, and clergy not being able to do same-sex marriages. And so I was in his office at different times. He and I communicated, and I always asked him one question. Bishop Carter, will you hold your clergy accountable to the book of discipline? Because I could tell he was pushing this. And so Bishop Carter remained our bishop. He was later to become president of the Council of Bishops of the Global Church. And so he had a strong influence. In 2016, 4 years later, I'm trying to explain how we got here. In 2016, the next General Conference was out in West, in Portland. Mary was watching it. I was work, so I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. This issue of changing the position of the church in terms of same-sex marriages and openly gay clergy being ordained came up again. It was shot down again by the global church. We're not going to change. Methodists have always had this position. We're not going to change. Something happened at that meeting that the bishops convinced the global church to let them do a study. So in 2016, the millions of dollars was invested in a committee called the Way Forward, and they were to come up with a proposal to the church on this controversial issue. So, you still with me so far? I haven't lost you? So in 2016, it was controversial again on this whole issue of human sexuality. The commission, the Way Forward, and a special general conference was set for 3 years later in 2019, only to deal with this one issue. Millions of dollars was sent on this organization and, this committee, and they met representatives from all over the world. Mary and I were at that one. It was in St. Louis, and it was 22 degrees. You think this Florida boy felt comfortable there? And we were there, and two of the plans, the council of bishops brought this plan from the Way Forward committee. They said, what we want to do is have a one church plan that says this. We're going to allow every church to decide on their own that you can either do same-sex marriages or you don't have to. And then we're going to allow every annual conference to decide whether they want to ordain openly professed homosexuals living that kind of life or not. We were there for 3 days. 3 days. Did I tell you what the temperature was? And we were outside handing out information, so that was fun. 3 days. Monday, the one church plan came to, it was shut down. Second day, we're just there for one issue. All over the world, millions of dollars, one issue. One church plan came up Tuesday, it was voted down. You have over 800 delegates from every continent. They voted it down. The third day, it came up for a vote, and it was voted down, and then riots, people started taking over the floor. The same thing that happened in Tampa. So I thought, okay, we've dealt with this almost the whole time since I had been at Lake Magdalene. We did it. We had a special general conference, and we voted to keep the position of the United Methodist Church the same as it's been since 1968, but unfortunately, that was just the beginning. As soon as that general conference was over, there was one pastor in this district, I got involved in that, said, you know what, I'm going to do same-sex marriages, and I don't care what the rules are. And so that started happening across the country. We actually, during this time, had a gay bishop elected, and that particular area of the country was directed to straighten that out, and they did not do that. And so I got to annual conference in 2019, and our annual conference passed a resolution that we're not going to, in Florida, we're not going to honor what the general conference decided. And that happened across the country. People are saying, we're not going to honor it, we don't agree with it. So you got to understand, I had been a pastor for 40 years, and we had always, across the country and the globe, we honor what we agree on. We honor what we agree on. Everything changed at 2019. Let me keep going. In January, a group of leaders came together, not official, and they said, you know what, we're going to work this out. We're going to come up with a plan that if the conservative churches want to leave, we're going to let you graciously leave, take your property with you because you know what, we're tired of fighting too. So a group of two different sides came together and came up with the protocol of reconciliation and grace through separation that lays out an 8-page plan that would allow conferences and churches to leave the United Methodist Church with their assets and liabilities and join a newly formed traditional Methodist denomination. Now remember, the traditional won the vote at 2019, but what happened is we saw that the bishops were not going to honor what was decided by the global church. So that was supposed to be voted on at General Conference, and you know what happened in 2020? It's a little thing called COVID. So then it was postponed to 2021. And then we were still having the disobedience of the Book of Discipline. We have like 3 gay bishops across the country. We have my pastor friend is still doing same-sex marriages, and he said, I don't care what the rules are. And you know that when I did a complaint that they just don't honor complaints, always in my ministry you could file a complaint against a pastor that was breaking the rules. When in this time, if a pastor breaks the rules in this area, they were not honoring it. So we went to 2021, and you know what? They canceled General Conference again. Okay, the pandemic was still going on a little bit, but then what happened in 2022? They canceled it again. So we're trying to find a way through this, and the only way you can find a way through this is to have a decision by the General Conference. And the third time they canceled it, the perception was it was no longer about COVID. They just didn't want it to happen. It was politics. So during this process, the Wesley Covenant Association had been formed to help churches that were struggling, clergy trying to struggle, that how do you operate in a denomination that's kind of gone rogue. And then in May of last year, the Global Methodist Church out of the Wesley Covenant Association was formed, launched, so churches that wanted to leave could join the traditional Methodist organization. So where we're at right now is we still have not had a general conference. We've had the people that said they were going to support the protocol of grace and reconciliation. Many of them have pulled their support and said, no, we don't want to do that. So we who are trying to honor the Book of Discipline have been stuck in no man's land. So during the 2019 General Conference, there was something added, and it was really designed, since the traditional plan had won, that it was really designed for churches that were more progressive. If they wanted to leave with their property, they could leave. Well, it turned out that the bishops in the United States weren't honoring the traditional plan. So it began that the traditional churches could leave with 2553. We're going to talk about what that is in just a second. When that happened, the cost of leaving was too high. A lot of churches felt it was too hard. They were asking too much money. And so, as you know, 100 and plus churches, including Lake Magdalene, went into litigation, not to make a decision, just to see if there could be a pathway to make it easier for churches that wanted to leave less costs. That litigation did not work. It's not working North Carolina. So where we're at right now is churches that want to leave the United Methodist Church and take their property with them. The only path is 2553, and we're going to talk about the cost of that in just a second. And 2,400 churches have done that in the last year across our country. 70 churches in Florida have said, we had enough. We'll pay what we can, we'll pay the money, and we're leaving with our property. Many of them have joined the Global Methodist Church. The option of going independent is before us, but we're going to talk about an option. Hear me again. For me, this is about trust. This is about trust. If I can't trust my leaders to honor what we've agreed about, you've broken my trust. I was raised by the World War II generation. You think my father didn't get me to follow the rules? That generation said, you follow the rules. And we've always followed the rules in the United Methodist Church. I mean, 43 years, bishop after bishop, not now. Not now. And so let me tell you a little bit about the Global Methodist Church, because that's one of the options that this is a separate vote. If there's two votes, there's a vote if a church wants to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church. A second vote is, this is 2553. This is the requirements of 2553 is you must have informational meetings, you must hold a vote, and you must have a 2/3 majority to vote to leave. A second vote in terms of what do you want to do now, not at the same time, and you only have to have a simple majority. Let me tell you a little bit about the Global Methodist Church and some of the things. It's a newly formed denomination. You need to know that coming out of seminary, I'm a John Wesley fan. The Methodist Church, the father of the Methodist Church is John Wesley. I love Wesleyan theology. Whatever I do in the future with my life, I'm going to be connected to a Wesleyan church, because I love grace and I love the biblical truth, holding those two together, and John Wesley did that as well as anybody. Some advantages of the Global Methodist Church. I know a lot of these leaders that have laid the foundation of this. You met Jay Therrell a couple of years ago. Jay will be one of the leaders eventually. He's leading the Wesley Covenant Association right now. 2 Methodist bishops have jumped out of the United Methodist Church and are leaders in that. I know a lot of the people who are leaders in the new denomination, and I have a lot of trust in them. Keep going, Tori. Wesleyan doctrine and theology based on Scripture. That's me. That's where I think the heart of most true Methodists are. We hold biblical doctrine together and with grace, and John Wesley laid the foundation. Let's keep going. Leaner, more effective denominational structure. In my view, the United Methodist Church has become top-heavy with agencies, bishops make a lot of money. DSs make a lot of money. There's a lot of hierarchy, and this denomination is streamlining where our apportionments will probably be, if churches that go with this will be half of what we paid in the United Methodist. Apportionments are what you pay every year to be part of the denomination. Let's keep going. Prioritizing the work of the local church. A lot of times, the emphasis in the United Methodist Church has gotten focused more on national world. They put a lot of emphasis on doing mission and making disciples in your area. Let's keep going. More resources. Again, if you don't pay as much money to the larger church, you can use the more money to do ministry out of your local church. No trust clause. Let me explain to you what a trust clause is. A trust clause in the United Methodist Church is even though you paid for your property, we own it. You got that? We own the property, and there's a reason for that. John Wesley had that some renegade pastor with his own theology couldn't come into a church and just take them in a wild direction. However, it's created complications now when we are under a hierarchy that's not honoring the rules, and the reason they can hold on to us is because of the trust clause. There will be no trust clause in the Global Methodist Church. That means that if Lake Magdalene or another church decides to go into a denomination and sometime down the road you say this isn't working, you can leave without going through all that a lot of churches are going through right now. Robust accountability. One of the most frustrating things is the lack of accountability. You've got to be able to hold leaders accountable. Amen? You can't hold bishops accountable. They can break the rules, and there's nothing you can do. There will be accountability in this denomination. Bishops will not be bishops for life. They will be bishops for a term. Then they'll come back and be pastors in the local church. Let's keep going. They will have a strong and clear biblical stance on marriage, sexuality, pro-life, and other bedrock issues that if you're a traditionalist, those are very important. They are to me. And it seems like the Methodist Church has just kind of gotten divided over some of the bedrock issues. We were a United Brethren church, evangelical Brethren church. Go back and look at what Lake Magdalene has stood for 128 years on these issues. And in 3 different denominations, and you will see the forefathers and mothers of this church had strong biblical stances on marriage, sexuality, pro-life, and other issues. Let's keep going. It's going to be a global church. We already have churches that have gone Global Methodist in the U.S., Asia, Europe, and Africa, and those will grow. Let's keep going. And by the way, when I came here at Lake Magdalene, you didn't know who Brent Byerman was. You get sent a pastor. In the Global Methodist Church, the leadership will have more input. You will be sent resumes, and you'll have more of an involvement in terms of who comes and then replaces me when I retire. And again, the bishops will only serve a certain amount of years before they go back. Right now, a bishop is untouchable. You can't hold him accountable, and he's a bishop for life. Let's see. So here's my question that I will close with, and then we'll look real quickly at 2553. This is my question. I am a person that trust is really important. Right now, I know the people who have founded the Global Methodist Church. They've been Methodist with me. I've followed them. I know the bishops. I have a lot of trust. There is a marquee right now in a church in St. Pete that has on their marquee these words: Jesus is God in drag. Now, that church can do anything they want to do. I mean, they're a church, but you know what it says on there? Under the name of the church, it has United Methodist Church. The newspapers have picked it up. Nobody's doing anything to hold that pastor or that church accountable. Really? Jesus is God in drag? So I do not trust, I've lost my trust in the United Methodist Church. There's no accountability. People are doing their own thing. And so I have to ask you, as we move closer to the vote, who do you trust? Where is your trust? And I think that's ultimately an important thing for me. And then I want to just share with you what the cost is. Do you want to know how much it costs to leave? Would you put that back up there? They base this on, what's that? No, I hadn't gone up this. This is based on 2 years apportionments. It's based on a percentage of the pension liabilities for all the pastors who've ever served this church. And by what's going to happen is we will have a vote on May of this, May 21st. If we decide, and if the church says, yay, you know, we want to disaffiliate, certainly the church can say no, we don't want to disaffiliate. But then if we decide to disaffiliate, it will go to annual, you have to be voted out by annual conference. 55 just got voted out a week ago at one annual conference. There's going to be another August annual conference, and the churches like ours that may be trying to see if the church wants to leave will fall into the August category. If this church votes to disaffiliate, if it's approved in August, then we will be officially out in September, and we would have to pay that much money then. And we have to raise that money somehow to pay by September, because to get officially out, you have to pay that money. So we, again, the process, the district superintendent will be back here on May 21st at 2 o'clock. We said, what if everybody doesn't get in the chairs by 2 o'clock? She goes, I got nothing else to do that afternoon. Take your time. So we're going to get everybody in. You have to be present to vote. You have to be a church member to vote. They are checking church membership. And then if the church votes not to leave, then it stops there. If the church votes to leave, then there will be another vote later on at the call of the church board to whether we want to join the Global Methodist Church or do something else. And then by the end of the summer, if the annual conference would vote the churches that are leaving out, then we would be officially out after we pay the money in September. The churches who have officially left already in this district are Palmacia Methodist. You all know, some of you know Bruce Toms. His church voted, and they're officially out now. Just talked to him this week on the phone. And Bay Hope, Matthew Hartsfield, they have voted, they're out. First United Methodist of Lutz they've voted to leave. First Methodist of Brandon has voted to leave. And Sylvan Abbey, which is a small church in Pinellas County, has voted to leave. That's in the first wave of our district. Again, 15 left last year, 55 have voted out this year. We'll have an annual conference in August for those who want to be considered to be voted out. Then there'll be one more in December. 2553, the option of leaving the Methodist Church ends December 31st. So if churches don't make the decision to leave this year, we don't know what the option of how to leave, because the Methodist Church hierarchy, there's other options of how you can leave, but they're only allowing 2553. The bishops have said, nope, you're only going to have 2553. So the churches that wait past December, we don't know what the future holds. They might decide on something in General Conference if they have it next year. But at this point, the only way to leave the United Methodist Church sunsets at the end of this year, 2553, to leave with your property and buildings. Did I cover enough? So, again, I say the other night, I don't want a speech. I know people want to preach, but if you have a question, or Tori has a question from live stream, I'm glad. By the time we get to a vote, I don't want anybody to say, I didn't know that. I had this question, nobody answered. We're going to have a meeting next week for information, and every question you have is fair game at me. I will answer with all my heart, honestly. If you want to talk a biblical question, if you want to talk a theological question, if you want to try to understand the process, I am glad you can call me in my office. You can come by my office. You can ask me tonight. But I don't want anybody to leave here and say, I don't understand that. So anybody got a question? Yes, Carol, let me get over. And Steve, I'll get to you.
You said that Ken Carter had been placed over the global church.
He was elected president of the Council of Bishops.
So if he's elected over the global church, no.
Confusion, global church.
Okay.
The Global Methodist Church is a different denomination.
Right, okay.
He became president of the Council of Bishops of the United Methodist Church. He is no longer president, but he was there for a season during the 2019 General Conference.
Just real quick. So the $552K to exit, we need to stroke a check in September. Should it all go that direction? Okay. So what are, other than soliciting from the congregation, do we have other options to acquire that, like a mortgage or something similar?
Are you offering to write a check? Are you?
I'm offering to write.
Steve, that's a great question, and we certainly, there are options to borrow the money through an agency with the Global Methodist. I've had many people over the years say, Pastor, if we go this route, we're going to give money. So I think we'll have to discern that. But many of you said, Pastor, we will give on this. So whether we could raise $500,000 in 3 months or whether we would need to borrow it, we do have reserves that we could probably pay for it. But I hate to tell you, we got some roofing issues we got to deal with in the sanctuary in the 4-story building. Aren't you excited to hear about that? You're excited. So, and by the way, my role, and people keep saying, well, you're leaving soon, you're leaving. I'm going to lead the church through this. If you decide to devote to the Global Methodist Church, then my role is to help you get that pastor, the right pastor, and then you need a younger pastor, and to hand the baton to them. If you say, no, we want to stay in the United Methodist Church, then my role is to help work with the denomination to get you the right pastor, from the United Methodist Church. So I'm here until the baton, so don't worry that I'm going to leave on you or slip out of there until we get to the next. We had some hands here. Yes, ma'am. One of our newest members.
I'd like you to explain again what happens with your pension that you've been paying into for so many years.
The pension, you mean if if our church goes to the global, my pension is in my name. And so whether we stay United Methodist or I stay United Methodist and go to the global, it doesn't affect my pension at all. And let me come back to you. Woohoo! You guys, it's Miss Sandra.
The children that have gone through the children that have gone through the process of joining the church, how old do they have to be able to vote?
My understanding is that if they've gone through confirmation, they are an official member of the church. If they, that's middle school.
Would they accept like a school ID? You had to have an ID. So
I think we can work that out. We can work that out. Trey, man, I'll get to your role.
So the $550,000 that we are going to owe, half of that we already owe for last year's apportionments, right? And then if we stay, we're going to owe the other half for next year's apportionments. So it really isn't that we owe any extra money, right?
Tracy's point is the leadership, with all this going on, withheld a lot of apportionments the last couple of years, saying we're not, until we get through this, we're not going to pay. So she's right. We're paying, in part, what we didn't pay because of withholding. Yes, Ms. Margaret.
I have a question. What's the role of the one board as far as selection of a pastor? And who's our representative for that?
The one board will have a role. The staff parish traditionally has done that. And you mean in terms of who from our church or who from the Global Methodist Church? It would be the staff parish part of the one board plan. That would be Lori Bentley would be the main person to lead that up. And then there's a group within the group that would support her in that. Okay, one more.
My next question is, last week you mentioned about the insurance. Can you give us actual numbers on that?
You know what? That's a great question, and I don't have it, and I don't think my answer was fair. Right now we're paying about $124,000 for insurance, and the insurance without wind mitigation is half that. The wind mitigation would put us actually over that, and let me tell you why we probably would consider not going with wind mitigation. When we had some roof damage and we went to our insurance company when the shingles blew off in the last hurricane, our deductible was $500,000. So I'm saying, why are we paying for wind mitigation when you're never going to use it? So, and Margaret's right, the conference says you have to pay wind mitigation, whether you use it or not. The other insurance would allow us not to come in with and maybe be independent, put money aside for if we have damage, and it would be half of the, but I didn't explain that, Margaret. Clearly that's what's that? I didn't get an updated amount. The amount was $65,000 that we got a few months ago, and it's about half of what we're paying with the conference. Yes, Mr. Hand.
What is 1 year's annual apportionment?
About $106,000.
is the church still? Didn't we pay off the mortgage, or we owe it?
We owe nobody anything except we paid this church probably about my second year here, paid off the mortgage that we had. And then we took up another one because the pastor put a roof on and a bunch of air conditioner work, and that's paid off. So we do not have debt.
Easy question. Next week, will there be any different than this information?
We are talking about, we're going to discuss that. One of the Global Methodist representatives for Florida is willing to come to give us more information so that we may have them here. So we need to confirm that. Yes, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you. I had a question on, you talking about the young pastors. What affiliation do we have? I'm talking about the Global Methodist Church. What affiliation do they have with any seminaries? In other words, where are we going to get the new pastors from?
Great question. There are, Asbury is one of those that a lot of them will be coming from. There's a couple more, and I can't come up with them right now. Richard's point, and we would accept from United Methodist seminaries too. Richard's point is what seminaries will be endorsed by the Global Methodist Church, and outside of Asbury, I can't think of which ones. Bob Brookover, do you know which ones? I don't know which ones they're endorsed. Did I hit everybody? Did I hit everybody? Yes, sir.
You had what brought this up previously was the bishops not following the disciplines, and it's my understanding they were supposed to be accountable. So when we have the new bishops in the new church, how are they going to be accountable when they choose to go if they choose to go the same path of the old ones?
Excellent. In writing, it's a different structure, and there's a built-in accountability. Right now, there is no way to hold a bishop accountable. The structure of the new denomination has steps to hold that bishop accountable. And again, we're going to believe that that's going to work. You all can hold me accountable. If I break the rules, I bet you, if I do something immoral, I bet they'll drag my rear end down, tomorrow. But when you reach bishop, it gets so much more, and they're bishops for life. They're bishops. The only question I ever asked Bishop Carty, got tired of hearing it, will you uphold the book of discipline? He never gave me an answer.
In the discernment video, they said we had to pay 6 times our apportionment. Wouldn't that be higher?
And yes, are you asking me, are you answering her question? No. That the amounts has changed, and the reason it's changed is a big part of it is the pension liability, and I don't know anything about financial markets, but the markets have changed, bringing the pension liability down. So we would probably, if we had disaffiliated last year, we were looking at $1 million, and it's gone down to this figure simply because of the markets changing. Okay?
We have 3 live stream questions. The first one is, how much was the legal fees LMUMC had to pay for the lawsuits we were involved in?
It was $1,000, and that was donated by an individual.
The second question is, where can I get more information on the Global Methodist Church?
You can go in the web, in your internet to Global Methodist Church, and they have great details under their webpage.
And then the last question is, for any church member who wants to vote but are out of the country or out of state on May 21st, is there any other option?
You know what? That is painful. Their rules, this is not my rules, this is the rules of this 2553. You must be present, and there you can't do an absentee ballots. And some of you have said, Pastor, we're going to Europe. We're going to see our family. We're doing different things. We're going on a cruise, and I get it. But we had to get the vote in. If we vote to disaffiliate, we had to get it in before the beginning of June so we could get into the August. So that's the timing. Pastor Brookover, and yes, sir. This guy is a retired pastor from Virginia. I don't know if that counts, Virginia, but that's where our bishop is from.
I love our bishop.
Yeah, this is a new bishop.
I love our new bishop. So anyhow, all I can tell you is this church is never going to have a problem getting a pastor. And all you need to do is put your trust in God, and people will be, pastors will be banging down the door. And I did want to say this. As far as I'm concerned, we should make a motion to make sure Brent is not allowed to retire.
You're going to have to talk to Mary about that. That's the end.
Question about the vote on the 21st. Is it 2/3 of the people who are present who vote, or 2/3 of the entire church?
2/3 or 66% of the 67% of the people present at the time. Not the whole congregation, those who are present and voting. Did I cover? Oh, Jim Manning. Good to see you, bro.
You too. Are you thinking or looking at any other Wesleyan denominations?
I think the board would be open. We have not searched any other. The only information I know is about the Global Methodist Church. Bay Hope up here is linking with some other larger churches in kind of an independent community. Some have talked about staying independent. There's been the Free Methodist Church, the Wesleyan Methodist. So some have been thrown. The only discussion we have had is about the Global Methodist Church. So I think we're open. Yes, sir. One of those that's going to be gone during the vote.
That's right. The more I hear from you and Emily, the more torn I am about this decision. One of the two things that I've heard that caught my eye, of course, was the $550,000 that Steve already questioned about. And the other one was having the ability to have the off-ramp that they've given you on this, looking at it like a one council or one church decision, which you could follow the doctrine of the Wesleyan here if you wanted to. That's the way it sounds. By staying United Methodist. Now, my questions, being my background was money, was Steve answered part of it. How are we going to do this? And you got to raise the $550,000. My other question to your board is, if in fact you do move, have you calculated $550,000 plus the next 16 months, which takes you through 12/24, how much it's going to cost this church, with the idea that we may even lose about 30% of our members?
Well, I don't know about losing members. The 550, there's no further cost with the United Methodist once you pay for that. The question that you mentioned about Pastor Emily saying, if you want to stay a United Methodist Church and you want an Orthodox traditional pastor, we will put that in your file. And I've said this to her face to face. I've said that I don't think she can guarantee that because there's so many leaving. Well, I trust him, but she's made, and Emily, by the way, I think she's a compassionate district superintendent, and I think that probably, even though she'll change over time, that if that's the will of this church, she will try her best to get a Wesleyan. I got to give everybody else a chance, Margaret. What do you got, Tori?
2 more questions. Does the Global Methodist Church have its own book of discipline?
Yes, it does.
And then secondly, when can we donate to the Exit Fund?
You know what, and again, the question, and this man's an accountant or was a finance person, so when he talks about money, and probably Steve was involved in money too, so I understand the amount of money. You know, I do not wash that under the rug or say that's no big deal. But again, in trusting God, I think that, again, you all have surprised me at times when we had to raise the money, and the last mortgage amount we had was paid off by one individual, which was about this much money. And again, I guess I would want the decision made maybe on more profound than just money, but I think the reality of money is certainly has to be thought about. Yes, let me get this precious lady. She had been raising her hand.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know whether everyone is aware of how contentious it's been, for instance, in North Carolina, and how people have been, congregations have been mistreated and taken over and all of that.
There's been some, not so much in this conference, especially with the new bishop. He seems very willing, if the church wants to leave, to let you go through the process. Susie Kreitz and her church in North Carolina, they've been told by their superiors, we're not going to honor your vote. There's been other conferences that bishops have taken a hard approach. We're very thankful for our new bishop who seems to be saying that if you really want to leave, we are setting up 3 special annual conferences so you can be voted out. Now, the thing in Florida that we had trouble with last year is the Board of Ordained Ministry secretly tried to push through 2 openly gay candidates. They asked us to vote on it as a group. And, according to the discipline, if you're openly saying, yes, I'm living an openly gay life, that is my lifestyle, then you are not qualified to be ordained or commissioned. They tried to sneak them through. It was voted down. It was interesting because I had people coming up to me, even a former pastor of this church, who said to me this, reached out to me and said this: we may not agree theologically, but we believe in following the rules. Amen? And so the vote of those voted down wasn't just conservatives. It was people saying, come on, let's wait until the book of discipline changes, and if it does in the Methodist Church in the future, then we can vote through open to gay people. But until then, I think we're going to run into that at the Florida Annual Conference again this year, so we'll see how that goes. Terry.
Thanks. One of the things that's true about this church is it's a very giving and loving church, and regardless of what way it goes, I think that, we need to extend grace to each other in that process. I want to speak to Ken's question. One of the things that we were told by Jay Therrell in some previous meetings was that the apportionments would be probably around 1/3 less than what we're paying now. So, half in some cases. And I think that, Ken, if people do leave, and we hope that that isn't the case, apportionments would be reduced so that the expense on that side would be reduced and less. Also, if I'm the sales guy, you're the bean counter, I'm the sales guy, so I look at a different equation. We can recoup those dollars if we maintain our apportionment giving at the same level, because apportionments will be less. Did I say that right? Yeah, I'm a salesman.
The bean counter, the salesman. Did I hit everybody? I see a couple of hands back here, and then I see Alyssa. I'll get over to you. Sharon.
I'm just wondering, we're going to have to pay our own insurance costs and things that have come through them, I presume, all these years. So, and you said we have some reserves, but in addition to this 502,000 plus, we're going to have to pay our own insurance on the building, and so do we have the funding?
Well, again, the insurance, if we don't pay wind mitigation, which as a pastor I would recommend, it's just a waste of money, because has anybody gotten their homeowner's bill yet? The conference is not paying our insurance. The conference charges us, charges us $125,000 a year. If we decide to leave, it will be cut off. I anticipate if we don't go with wind mitigation with the new company, the last figure I heard was $65,000. So we would get our insurance cut in half. But again, and Emily did not know, but she said, you get a better deal going with the conference. Right now, we found out they're not covering, what is the value of what did they say with insurance? The value of the buildings. They've been undervalued them. We didn't know that until the other insurance came in and said, they haven't valued your buildings the way they should be. So insurance is a tricky thing in Florida. The Global Methodist Church has set all the churches up like us with this one agent that has worked with us, and he said he'll let me know this week, because the 55 churches that have just left have contacted, a lot of them contacted him. So the question is wind mitigation in Florida. Why would it be so high in Florida? Hurricanes. And he was supposed to get some updated information this week. I saw Lissa.
This is kind of along the same lines, but what is the dollar amount to join another, like the global church? We have to lose the logos. I mean, thinking about everything, and not just insurance, not just apportionments, but is there a sign-up fee, you know, that kind of thing, or anything else that we have to change in here in our branding and that sort of thing?
Well, we don't have to get rid of the hymnals. Emily said that. Over time, you may. Obviously, you're changing the sign out in front. The litigation team that we worked with is going to help us with the and there's not much of a fee for that change if we have to change corporation. I don't think that's a factor. There's no charge of joining the Global Methodist Church. Yeah, and I don't know. Okay.
You know, everybody's worried about who's staying and who's going. But when you really come down to it, if, let's say we do get the 2/3, the 1/3, where are they going to go? Do they want to then maybe just stay with us? Or then where do they go?
Well, we're going to leave that into God's hands, because I don't think any of us have any answers. We hope the whole church stays together, but we've known that this issue in culture, I told you somebody wrote me after the 2020 election and said, I'm leaving the church because I think I know who you voted for, Pastor. That's the contention he left the church. I had poured a lot into this family. He thinks he knew who I voted for. I never would say. So I hope people stay, but I don't know the contentious world that we live in.
Oh, I was just going to say we may have to change the website as well, because it's...
Yeah, change. I think that's the little stuff. All right, Don Cooter, I think that may wrap us up.
Just one point to look at. Yeah, the $550,000 is a big number. It was our $10 million worth of property that we have here. And also, as far as people may be leaving, well, there may be churches that vote to stay with the United Methodist Church, and there may be folks looking for a church to come to.
Yeah, we don't want to lose anybody, but we have had people, church people from other churches come here over this issue. Yes, ma'am.
This is just a question about membership. If you find out there's a mistake on the roll and somebody says, I'm a member, and they're not on the roll, what do they have to do?
We're dealing with that now. We got some people that want to join at the last minute. We're trying to get, have them call. If they need to talk to me, we'll work it out. We don't want anybody to feel slighted at all. If they think they're a member, we've tried to keep our roles up to date, but during COVID, it's been hard. And so, yes, Tori. Oh, over 1,000, I think, on a weekly basis. I don't know the exact numbers, and I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a question of why that's being asked. I guess I'd love to know the reason that's being asked, because, again, the vote will be upon who is present on that day. Whether you have 100 people, 400 people, or 1,000 people, it will be whether you have 2/3 of the vote on that day. Yes, sir.
We don't have to make a decision until December the 31st to disaffiliate. Why can't we have a second vote when those other people are here?
I don't know. I don't know. We've tried to investigate the churches that have failed in the vote, and I haven't gotten a clear path. I don't know if that's allowed. Hopefully we won't have to explore what the future is. But that's a great question. His question is, what if you don't get the vote? Can you vote again? at a later time. And I don't have the exact answer to that question, but I think it's a great question. Have we covered enough for tonight? How many have not had dinner yet? Well, thank you. You all have asked good questions. We're going to be back here next week. We probably will have a little bit different format. I know we figured everybody's not going to come to 2 nights, so we're going to kind of get together and figure where we need to add information, come back next week. And then the 21st at 2 o'clock, and remember, again, if there's any doubt that you think you're a member and you're not, or you've been taken off because of inactivity or whatever, double check. Each Sunday morning and each Wednesday night we have people checking those lists, and we want to be fair. By the time we get to the vote, I don't want anybody to say that this wasn't fair, that we didn't have enough information, the information was one-sided, or that, we gave Emily the full gamut last week. She was here to share the other side of not disaffiliating. We gave her full time, full questions, and we want to be fair. So we have one more informational meeting. You can go to our discernment page. Tori has done a great job posting this. You can get most of the answers to your question on any of your questions looking at the web page from the church. And then, so we got next week, we got the following Wednesday night, we got dinner. We're going to do something special that night, not connected with this, and then we have the vote on the 21st. 1:15 registration starts, but it will be going, as I said, she says, I'm not in any hurry. If people are still standing outside, we're gonna wait until everybody comes in. No, sir, we'll be in the sanctuary. And let me just say one more thing. It's already been said, I think, by Terry. My prayer is that we do this with love. We live in such a culture now, you can't be a Democrat or a Republican and like each other, it's almost. When COVID came out and people had different opinions on the vaccine, people were at each other's throats. I mean, this issue in the denomination, when I came back, when we had 2019 annual conference. Remember, I've been here 40 years. We've played basketball with people of different theology. We go to school of ministry up in Leesburg. I had people in 2019 annual conference that wouldn't sit with me anymore. They wouldn't even sit near me. I have a clergy meeting tomorrow, and I'm wondering if because a lot of the guys who have left already their churches, they're not going to be there. So I don't know if I'll be an outcast. And I don't want that. I've never backed away from anybody who disagrees with me. I've never shown any kind of lack of love. But boy, it's hard for people who disagree on certain things to be together. And so we're trying to pray through this. We're trying to love one another through this. And if you have any questions during the next couple weeks that you're not getting answered, feel free to email me or come by the office or grab me on a Sunday morning. Would you stand? Let me bless you as we go forth. May the Lord lead us. Lord, we pray that you will guide our church, provide for our church, fill us in this process with your love and your strength, in faith and hope. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Spirit. And all God's people said, amen. Thanks, guys.